Hello there, you are now listening to a part 2 of an interview that we had with Ria that was released for February's episode, all about romance, and we talked quite a bit about family within that episode as well. This episode is going out for International Asexuality Day, and because Ria is asexual as well as aromantic, we thought it'd be really important to talk about asexuality as well, but in a separate episode. So just to start off with, Ria, how would you personally define asexuality?
The basic definition of asexuality is having little to no sexual attraction. But for me, it's hard to define because I'm also aromantic and I view them connected to each other. But for me, basically, I've always known that sex wasn't something that really intrigued me. It wasn't something that I really desired from other people. I didn't look at someone and think that, oh, maybe I want to have sex with them. I thought that maybe I was demisexual or maybe I was gray sexual because I didn't really view sex as as something that I was repulsed by. But upon further research, I found the things such as sex favorable, which means that you're in favor of having sex even if you don't experience the sexual attraction, and sex neutral, which means that you kind of don't care either way whether you have sex or you don't have sex, and sex repulse, which was what I thought asexuality was connected to, which is being repulsed by sex. You don't want to have sex at all. You don't even want to talk about or think about sex. And it turns out I was just sex neutral. I didn't really care about sex either way, but it's just something that I didn't really have a desire for from other people. So it's kind of like, okay, so I guess I'm sex neutral, asexual.
Because you'd mentioned finding people aesthetically pleasing. You had mentioned it, but do you find people aesthetically pleasing?
Yeah, I do. The thing is, I don't experience it often. I think I've experienced it like less than 5 times, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Although I do find other people like attractive, gorgeous even. I don't really feel that pull that often. The most that I've experienced it was when I was still in high school and in college.
Mm-hmm.
Although I guess that's most of my life right now, considering I just graduated college.
Right.
But yeah, I don't necessarily feel that pull because for me, aesthetic attraction is more than just finding someone gorgeous or beautiful or handsome. For me, it's basically I can't stop thinking about how they look. Sometimes it's hard to look away from them, and there's this certain pull I have towards them that I can't explain. It doesn't feel like romantic attraction or sexual attraction or even platonic attraction. I don't necessarily want to be friends with them. I don't want to date them. I don't want to have sex with them, but I just can't stop looking at them. It's hard to explain, but that's how I experience aesthetic attraction.
I think I experience it in a similar way and not very often. So it'll be like, I can appreciate someone who's good looking. Like the number of times I've heard people say, I watched Aquaman because of Jason Momoa. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, like I can see it. And that's generally how but then there's been a very few times where I'm like, I really want to look at this person, but I can't explain why. And that doesn't happen very often. It's just more like, yeah, I can see it. And yeah, they're pretty good looking. So yeah, I basically, I understand.
Sorry, I'm just reminded that I'm just like, I find more drawn people attractive than I do real people. Yeah. I'm famous in my friend group for only liking boring white men who you forget on sight.
Didn't we say in a previous episode you were like, men, but 2D men, yeah. So we've just had you on for an episode about romance and aromanticism, where you talked about the experiences of Filipinos who are aromantic. From your experience, because I know you've done a little bit of advocacy and activism, what are the experiences of Filipino aces that you may not necessarily seen being described by other aces around the world?
I guess we talked about this the previous episode, but like there's a strong sense of family here. So even if you don't from even if you romantically or don't romantically involve or wait, how do I say this? Even if you are or aren't romantically involved with someone, you're still kind of expected to have family, to have kids. So it's hard for people who are sex rebels or even people who are sex neutral but just kind of don't want kids because there's a strong sense of family here. So there's the need to procreate basically. It's fine if you're not sexually attracted to someone, but you must have kids. So it's kind of tough. I mean, it feels like you don't really have a choice about what kind of path you have to take in life. You may make your own choices on what kind of job you have, what kind of life you have, but as a but as someone who isn't interested in family, it's kind of tough to kind of just go up to someone and say, actually, I don't want family. Actually, I don't want to have sex with someone. So even if I do have family, I'm going to adopt. And people here, they don't even think about adoption. No one really talks about adopting kids. I don't think I've even met someone who was adopted in my whole life here in the Philippines, just because it's so uncommon, because it's so expected for people who have kids to just birth them, really. And it's basically the idea of asexuality is basically non-existent here in the Philippines. The people I've met who are Filipino and asexual, they found out about asexuality through international spaces like Tumblr, Twitter. Um, Sometimes they research it, but if you don't have access to the internet or if you don't even know how to search about it, it's not going to be something you just know about because it's not something that people talk about. I've never seen it mentioned anywhere in TV, in whether in small channels or in big national channels. Um, it's only through recent years that I've actually seen the term asexuality pop up in local news articles, and the times I've seen them less than 10. So if you're not like always on the internet, it's gonna be hard to see the term asexuality. So it's even less known here compared to the to other countries like in USA or even in UK.
And something I remember talking to other Asian aces about, and I think with yourself, is one of the so you're able to access knowledge about asexuality through things like Tumblr, but they tend to be from Western, sort of in terms of the users will tend to be Western, and therefore the way we define asexuality can be quite Western centric and also white and Western centric. So I was wondering, how does that therefore impact you as somebody who's Filipino, who's accessing this knowledge online, but at the same time, it may not necessarily fully reflect your experience, or maybe not even at all?
I guess it's just hard to talk about it with other people who don't have that knowledge because it's hard enough to talk about being queer here in the Philippines when it's not even that known, the different nuances of the different queer identities. We kind of just think of everything as just one thing. If you're gay, you're bakla. If you're trans, you're bakla. If you're lesbian, then you're tibo, which is kind of which is just own thing. And like, so explain to someone who doesn't even understand the difference between being transgender or non-binary to something like being attracted to the same gender, it's going to be even harder to talk about what it's like being asexual
Mhm.
when there's hardly any nuance between the different queer identities. How we're going to talk about something that's even harder to explain, even lesser, even less known, and especially when it's all in English terms. We don't have we don't have a Tagalog term for it. We don't have a Bisaya term for him. Cebuano, none of that. We all talk about it in English terms. So if you're going to talk about it to someone who maybe didn't study or is just not proficient in English, how are we going to explain asexuality when they can't even understand the terms? When it's so hard to explain, it's so intricate that you can't even talk about it to someone in Filipino. So, it's just you in a way you kind of just have to adopt this like Western perspective when you talk about asexuality. So it's even harder for them to accept it because they're just going to think, oh, you're just being influenced by those Americans or those Europeans.
Mm, absolutely. And I think another thing that also has come up in conversations I've had is what sex education is like in the Philippines versus, let's say, what we might experience in the UK and the USA. So, and that in itself also being a barrier as well. Because I mean, I see asexuality as part of sex education. I think it should be. I'm not sure it actually is as part of, for example, UK sex ed. It might be in maybe a few schools. But I know that, as I say, to talk about sexualities, you also need to have good sex education. And I know that is also one of the issues that you face in the Philippines, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. For here, you're not even really expected to have sex education in your schools. I've met some people who said that they've talked about queer identities in school settings, very briefly, but at least there was that. But even recently, we had this law that was, uh, how do I say this? We had this law that was passed, which was the Reproductive Health Bill, which is supposed to help, people learn more about reproductive health. But it's been barred so much that you don't even really see it being implemented. There's no laws about what kind of sex education you should have or even have sex education in general. Um, I I was in high school for like the late 2000s, and that was just fairly recently, and we didn't have sex education at all. Uh, there are some younger people that I've talked to that have kind of had a little bit of it. I think they only had like one or two classes about it. So there is some sort of change, but it's slow going, and I'm not going to expect like actual full blown sex education here for at least another 10 years, maybe.
As you mentioned in the previous episode where we talked about aromanticism, how important finding other people like you is. And so I was just wondering if you can talk to us about Asexual Support Philippines, what do they do, and a bit about your activism and advocacy work that you've also done sort of with them. Am I correct in thinking that?
Okay. Well, Asexual Support Philippines was really started as kind of like a social kind of group. It was created during the start of the pandemic. I only found out about it around the end of 2020. But basically, when I came to it, it was mostly stuff like social gatherings, like parties where we would have like trivia, or kind of like have Q&As. Um, I started a book club around last year, and sometimes we have watch parties. But recently, we started looking more into advocacy work. Last year, we were invited by this Asian asexual group, which was the Asian Network of Aspec Queers Association, and we basically made presentations about what it's like being Filipino and asexual. We've also supported some members in their research on asexuality in the Philippines. And this year, we're looking to expand more our admin group so that we can do more volunteer work and do not only social activities, but also advocacy work. If you're interested in joining or even just looking at our group, we're available. We're You can find us in Facebook and in Discord. Just search Asexual Support Philippines in Facebook, and you can also look at Discord where we regularly bump our group tagged Asexual and Philippines so that you can join us if you want. Um, Although we are largely a Filipino group, we also have members who aren't Filipino or have Filipino blood. They're just interested, asexual individuals looking for community, and we regularly talk to them. So if you're interested, come join us.
And as to somebody who is part of this Discord server, I've really appreciated being part of it because I've actually learned a bit more about Filipino cultures thanks to it. Actually, I'll just be like that one person in diaspora going, hey, could somebody ask this question for me? I'm like that one just going, hello. So yeah, I feel like a little child who's like asking questions. So yeah, I really appreciate the server just existing for me to sort of figure out how I feel and my experiences as being someone who's Filipino and ace. But the other thing is, the first time I came across Ria, so Dean, Angelica, you may not know this, was at the Asexuality conference in 2020. So I was very much in the closet and scared, and I was on GatherTown. And my video camera was off, which is not something I would normally do for GatherTown, but I was like very anxious and in the closet. And then I was just walking around and I hear this voice. And I was just like, that sounds like a Filipino accent. And I asked Ria, I was like, so can I just ask, where are you from? And then we ended up, and basically Ria said, yeah, I'm from the Philippines. And I was like, yes. And that was just very exciting for me as somebody who's figuring themselves out. I didn't know any other Filipino aces. I met you, and then through the Discord server, I've met so many more, and that's just wonderful. And it's been really, really nice for me personally to be able to have those conversations because as sort of we've talked about, when we look at asexuality online, it does tend to be from a white Western perspective. And as much as that's been useful for me, it's only useful to a certain point. So I just appreciate people like you being able to have safe spaces like this where we can find other people, really. And also the people on the Discord are really nice. So, but yeah, is there anything else you wanted to mention before we finish up this episode, Ria?
I guess just that asexuality is still widely known by most people, even though it's getting more and more attention and it's becoming more and more widespread. A lot of people still don't really know what it means, or the kind of identities that sprung up from it and the different terms and all that. And even in queer spaces, it's tough to speak as someone who is asexual and aromantic. So if you can listen to us, we have a lot we want to talk about, a lot we want to share with you, and we're always going to be willing to talk about it to anyone who's willing to listen.
Okay, well, thank you so much for talking to us in the previous episode about aromanticism and in this shorter episode about asexuality. I have been Sarah.
This has been Angelica. Been D.
Bye, everyone.
Hey. Thank you again, Ria.
Thank you, Ria.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.